I never thought I'd spend a Tuesday night sitting in my own driveway, watching a stranger walk out of my house carrying a ring light. But life has a way of putting you in situations you never rehearsed for, and this was one of them. My name is Dale Jeffries. I'm 47 years old, and I work as a rotational engineer on offshore oil platforms in the Gulf of Mexico. 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. That's been my schedule for the past 11 years. It pays well, better than anything I could find onshore, and after my wife Karen passed from ovarian cancer 6 years ago, the rhythm of it kept me sane. 3 weeks of hard work where I didn't have to think about the empty house waiting for me. 3 weeks at home where I could tend to Karen's garden, fix things around the property, and pretend life still had the shape it used to. I live in a 3-bedroom ranch-style house in Katy, Texas, just west of Houston. Nothing fancy. Karen and I bought it in 2012 when the neighborhood was still mostly cow pastures and new construction. It's filled up since then, young families mostly, but I've stayed. The house has Karen's touches everywhere. The powder blue kitchen cabinets she picked out, the built-in bookshelves I installed for her birthday one year, the Japanese maple in the backyard she babied through 2 droughts. Leaving would feel like leaving her behind. When you're gone 21 days at a stretch, you need someone to keep an eye on things. Mow the lawn, check the mail, make sure the AC hasn't died in the August heat and turned your house into a mold factory. For years, I had my neighbor Roy handle it. But Roy retired to Fredericksburg last spring, and I needed a replacement. That's when my buddy Pete from work mentioned a guy named Cody Wyatt, mid-30s, did odd jobs and handyman work around the Katy area. Pete's sister had used him for years. Reliable, honest, good with his hands. I met Cody at a Whataburger near my house. He seemed like a decent enough guy. Firm handshake, looked me in the eye, drove a clean truck. We agreed on $400 a month. He'd mow the lawn every week, bring in the mail, check the house twice a week, and handle any small maintenance issues that came up. I gave him a spare key and a copy of my rotation schedule so he'd know when I was home and when I wasn't. For the first 4 months, everything was fine. The lawn looked great. He replaced a leaky faucet in the guest bathroom without me even asking, and only charged me for the parts. I thought I'd found the perfect setup. I even told Pete I owed him one. Then in late September, I got a water bill that made no sense, $712. My average bill when I'm offshore is around $60. Even when I'm home, it never breaks $150. I called the utility company from the platform, standing on the helipad during a break because it was the only place I could get decent signal. They confirmed the meter reading was accurate. No leaks detected on their end. Probably a running toilet or irrigation issue, they said. I texted Cody and asked him to check. He replied an hour later saying he'd looked around and everything seemed normal. Maybe a sprinkler head was stuck, he said. He'd keep an eye on it. I let it go. That was my first mistake. 3 weeks later, I was home for my off rotation. Everything looked fine at first glance. But on my second day back, I noticed things. Small things. A scuff mark on the hallway wall that hadn't been there before. The living room furniture was slightly rearranged. The couch pushed about a foot closer to the window. There was a faint smell in the guest bedroom, something floral, like perfume or scented lotion. Not unpleasant, just wrong. I don't own anything that smells like that. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe Cody had moved the couch to vacuum behind it. Maybe the smell drifted in from outside. I'd been living alone too long. You start noticing things that don't matter. But then I found the hair. Long, blonde, caught in the drain of the guest bathroom. I don't have long blonde hair. Cody doesn't have long blonde hair. Nobody who should have been in my house has long blonde hair. I stood in that bathroom for a long time, holding that single strand between my fingers, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was from the previous time I'd had company, but I couldn't remember the last time anyone had stayed over. My sister visited at Christmas, but she has dark hair. My daughter is in college in Oregon and hasn't been home since May. I wanted to ask Cody directly, but something told me not to. Something told me to watch first and ask questions later. I'd made the mistake once before, years ago, of confronting a coworker I suspected of stealing tools on the platform. Turned out he was innocent, and the real thief saw my accusation and got more careful. I learned that if you think someone's doing something wrong, you don't tip them off. You gather evidence first. The reason I didn't just call the police is simple. I had nothing. A water bill, a moved couch, a smell, and a hair. I could already hear the dispatcher trying not to laugh. I needed something concrete. Before I headed back offshore, I went to Home Depot and bought a 4-camera security system, the kind that records to a cloud server. I spent an afternoon installing them myself. One in the living room, hidden inside a fake plant on the bookshelf Karen built. One in the kitchen, tucked on top of the refrigerator behind a cereal box. One covering the backyard, mounted under the eave where it looked like a motion sensor light. And a doorbell camera that I disguised with the same brushed nickel faceplate as the old one. I tested every angle, every feed. I downloaded the app on my phone and made sure the notifications worked. Then I told nobody. Not Cody, not Pete, not my sister. I went back offshore with a knot in my stomach and a phone that pinged every time something moved in my house. The first week was quiet. Cody came twice, just like he was supposed to. Tuesday and Friday. He mowed on Tuesday, checked the mail both times, walked through the house. Everything normal. I started to feel foolish. Then, on day 9 of my rotation, a Thursday evening at 6:14 p.m., my phone buzzed. Front door motion detected. I opened the app and watched Cody pull into my driveway. But he wasn't alone. A silver Hyundai Tucson pulled in behind him. A woman got out, late 20s maybe, carrying a large canvas bag and what looked like a tripod case. Cody let her in with his key. I sat on my bunk on the platform, 200 miles out in the Gulf of Mexico, watching a stranger walk into my home. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from anger. Through the living room camera, I watched them set up. The woman unpacked the canvas bag and pulled out lighting equipment. A ring light, a softbox, reflectors. She arranged my living room like it was a studio, moving my furniture, adjusting my curtains for the light. Cody helped her, carrying equipment, shifting Karen's bookshelf to the side like it was a prop. Then the woman sat down on my couch, pulled out her phone, and started filming herself. She talked to the camera for about 40 minutes, gesturing, smiling, holding up products. Skincare, from what I could tell. She was shooting content. In my house, on my couch. When she finished, she repacked everything. Cody helped her rearrange the furniture back to roughly where it had been. Roughly. They stood at the door talking for a few minutes, and then she handed him something. I couldn't see clearly on the small screen, but the motion was unmistakable. She was paying him. I recorded everything. The app automatically saved all motion-triggered footage to the cloud, but I also screen recorded the live feeds on my phone, just in case. Over the next 12 days, I watched my house get used 5 more times. Different people, each time. A man in his early 30s did a podcast-style interview in my kitchen, sitting at my breakfast table with 2 microphones and a laptop. A couple filmed what appeared to be a real estate walkthrough video, pointing at features of my house like they were selling it. A young woman did a photo shoot in my backyard, posing by Karen's Japanese maple in different outfits while another woman photographed her. And twice more, the original blonde woman came back for more content sessions. Cody was present every single time. He let them in, helped them set up, and collected payment when they left. He was running my house as a rental studio. I started doing math. If he was charging even $150 per session, which seemed low based on what I'd seen, he was pulling in close to $1,000 a week from my property alone. That water bill suddenly made sense. All those people using my bathrooms, my kitchen sink, running the AC for hours while they set up lights. But it got worse. On the 20th day of my rotation, one day before I was scheduled to fly home, the doorbell camera caught something that changed everything. A man I didn't recognize showed up alone. He didn't have equipment. He had a duffel bag and a pillow. Cody wasn't with him. But the man pulled out a key, a different key than Cody's based on the keychain, and let himself in. He stayed the night. I watched him eat food from my fridge, watch my television, and go to sleep in my guest bedroom at 11:30 p.m. He left the next morning at 7 a.m., locking up behind him. Cody wasn't just renting my house as a studio. He was renting it as a place to stay. I flew home the next day. My helicopter landed in Galveston at noon, and I was in my driveway in Katy by 2:30. I didn't tell Cody I was coming back. I deliberately told him my rotation ended 2 days later than it actually did, just to see what would happen. My house was empty when I arrived, but the evidence was everywhere now that I knew what to look for. A coffee mug in the dish rack that wasn't mine, plain white, no handle chip. My couch was about 2 inches off its usual mark. I could see the indentations in the carpet where it normally sat. The guest bathroom had been used recently. Wet towel on the rack, still damp, and in the spare bedroom, the comforter was pulled too tight, the way someone who isn't used to your house makes a bed, trying to leave it better than they found it, but getting the details wrong. I sat at my kitchen table and went through every piece of footage systematically. I cataloged dates, times, faces, license plates. The doorbell camera had caught clear shots of every vehicle. I took screenshots, printed them at the FedEx office down the road, and put together a folder. Then I started searching. The blonde woman was easy to find. Her name was Taylor Briggs. She had about 40,000 followers on Instagram and was growing fast on TikTok. I scrolled through her content and felt my stomach drop. There was my living room, my couch, my bookshelves, Karen's blue kitchen cabinets in the background. She'd posted dozens of videos filmed in my house. Her followers thought it was her apartment. They complimented the decor, the natural light, the cozy vibe. One commenter said, "Your place is literally goals. Karen's place, Karen's blue cabinets, Karen's bookshelves." I found 3 other creators who had filmed in my house. One guy's YouTube channel had a video with 12,000 views shot at my kitchen table. In the thumbnail, you could see the framed photo of Karen and me on our 10th anniversary, hanging on the wall behind him. The overnight guest was harder to identify, but his license plate led me to a name through a public records search: Vincent Howell, a traveling medical device salesman based out of Austin. I found a listing on a platform I'd never heard of, one of those alternative rental sites that markets itself as cheaper than Airbnb. My house was on there. 3 bedrooms, quiet suburban neighborhood, full kitchen access, $240 a night. The listing had been active for 3 months. 11 reviews, all positive. The photos in the listing were clearly taken by someone who knew what they were doing. Professional lighting, wide angles. I recognized Taylor Briggs's photography style from her Instagram. She was doing double duty, filming her own content and creating the listing photos. I had a decision to make. Part of me wanted to drive to Cody's apartment and knock on his door, but I'd been down that road before in my head, and it never ended anywhere productive. I needed this handled properly. I called the Fort Bend County Sheriff's Office the next morning, not the non-emergency line. I walked into the station on FM 1092 with my folder, my phone, and a flash drive containing every piece of footage I'd saved. The deputy at the front desk took one look at my materials and called a detective. Detective Maria Sandoval listened to my entire account without interrupting. She watched the key footage on her office computer, pausing occasionally to make notes. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "Mr. Jeffries, this is solid. You've done better documentation than most of my investigators would have gotten." She pointed at the screen showing Cody accepting payment from Taylor Briggs. "This is clear-cut, unauthorized use of your property for commercial purposes, trespassing, and fraud. The overnight rental is a separate issue, potentially criminal, depending on how he represented ownership to the guests." She asked about the key. I told her I'd given it to Cody willingly for the purpose of house maintenance. She nodded and said that actually made things cleaner from a legal standpoint. He had authorized access for a specific purpose and exceeded it for personal profit. There was no ambiguity about whether he had permission to run a business out of my home. What happened next took 3 weeks. Detective Sandoval obtained records from the alternative rental platform through a subpoena. The listing had generated just over $14,000 in booking fees since July. The payments went to an LLC called Wyatt Property Solutions, registered to Cody's home address. He'd created an actual business entity to collect the money from renting out my house. The detective also discovered something I hadn't. My house wasn't the only one. Cody had similar arrangements with at least 6 other homeowners in the Katy and Cypress area, all people who traveled for work, all people who'd hired him for the same basic services I had: lawn care, mail collection, house checks. All of them had given him a key. And all of them had no idea their homes were being used as content studios and short-term rentals. The total take across all 7 properties was just under $90,000 over 8 months. Taylor Briggs, it turned out, was in on it. She wasn't just a client renting studio space. She was Cody's girlfriend, and she managed the online presence for the operation. She'd created the rental listings, coordinated bookings, handled the content creator schedule, and managed a shared Google Calendar that tracked which houses were available on which dates based on the homeowners' travel schedules. The schedules we'd all given Cody voluntarily so he'd know when to mow and check the mail. The arrest happened on a Friday morning. Deputies picked up Cody at a Starbucks drive-thru at 7:45 a.m. They got Taylor at the apartment they shared in Cyprus an hour later. I wasn't there for it, but Detective Sandoval called me that afternoon. We got them both. Cody didn't say a word. Taylor talked for about 3 hours straight, trying to minimize her involvement, but her own text messages contradicted everything she said. She had conversations with Cody going back to February, discussing which properties to target and how to scale the operation. The charges were extensive. Unauthorized use of a habitation, fraud, criminal trespass, and theft of services for both of them. Cody faced additional charges for breach of fiduciary duty since he'd been paid to protect the very properties he was exploiting. The case went to trial the following April. I testified for nearly 2 hours, walking the jury through the footage, the timeline, the discovery. 4 of the other 6 homeowners also testified. One of them, a woman named Linda Ochoa, who worked as a flight attendant, broke down on the stand when the prosecutor showed photos of strangers sleeping in the bed she shared with her husband. Another homeowner, a Coast Guard officer named James Whitfield, described finding unfamiliar personal items in his house and thinking he was losing his mind before learning the truth. Cody's defense attorney argued it was a misunderstanding, that Cody believed the homeowners wouldn't mind the occasional use of their properties since they were empty anyway. The jury didn't buy it. The Google Calendar alone proved this was deliberate and systematic. Cody was sentenced to 4 years in state prison and 7 years probation. Taylor got 30 months and 5 years probation. Both were ordered to pay restitution to all 7 homeowners. My share came to just over $11,000, which covered the inflated utility bills, the security system, new locks, and legal consultation fees. But money wasn't what kept me up at night. What ate at me was the violation. For 8 months, strangers had been in my home. They'd sat on Karen's couch. They'd used Karen's kitchen. That influencer had stood in front of Karen's bookshelves, the ones I built with my own hands, and smiled for the camera like they belonged to her. 40,000 people saw my dead wife's blue kitchen cabinets and thought they were some stranger's aesthetic choice. I found a comment on one of Taylor's videos where someone wrote, "Love the blue cabinets, so vintage." Karen spent 3 weeks picking that shade of blue. She tested 11 samples on the cabinet doors before she found the right one. She called it morning sky blue. It wasn't vintage. It wasn't an aesthetic. It was her. I tore those cabinets out 2 months after the trial. I couldn't look at them anymore without seeing Taylor Briggs sitting in front of them, hawking moisturizer. I replaced them with plain white ones. It felt like losing Karen all over again, but in a different way. Not to cancer this time, but to the contamination of the memory. Those cabinets used to make me smile when I walked into the kitchen. Now, they made me think of strangers. The other homeowners went through their own versions of this. James Whitfield installed a safe room in his house. Linda Ochoa moved to a gated community. One couple divorced over the stress of the whole ordeal, each blaming the other for hiring Cody in the first place. I still work offshore. I still do my 3-and-3 rotation. But things are different now. I replaced every lock with a smart lock system that uses temporary codes. When my lawn guy comes, he gets a code that works for a 2-hour window and then expires. Nobody has a permanent key to my house anymore. Nobody. I installed 8 cameras, more than double what I had before. I check them every morning from the platform, first thing when I wake up, and every night before I go to sleep. My coworkers tease me about it. They call me Big Brother. I don't care. I'd rather be paranoid than victimized again. I also got to know my neighbors. I mean, really know them. I introduced myself to every household within 3 doors of mine. I gave them my phone number, my daughter's phone number, and my offshore schedule. I told them plainly that if they see anyone at my property who isn't the lawn service, call me immediately. Don't assume I sent them. Don't assume it's a friend. Call me. Mrs. Gutierrez next door now texts me photos anytime anyone approaches my front door. Pizza delivery, Amazon packages, Jehovah's Witnesses. I get pictures of all of them. It's excessive, and I love it. If you're someone who travels for work, someone whose house sits empty for days or weeks at a time, here's what I wish I'd known before this happened to me. Don't give anyone a permanent key. Smart locks with temporary, trackable codes cost less than $200, and they eliminate the single biggest vulnerability in your home security. Install cameras that record to the cloud, not to a local hard drive that someone can walk off with. Check your utility bills every single month, not just when they seem high. Know your baseline numbers. A spike is a signal, and signals should be investigated, not explained away. Search your address on every rental platform you can find. Airbnb, VRBO, Furnished Finder, Hoofy, all of them. Do it at least once a quarter. It takes 5 minutes, and it could save you from what happened to me. Talk to your neighbors. They are your first line of defense, not the police, not your security system, not your property manager. A neighbor who knows your schedule and has your phone number is worth more than any camera. And if something feels off, if the furniture seems different, if there's a smell that doesn't belong, if a water bill doesn't add up, don't talk yourself out of it. Don't rationalize. Don't wait. Investigate quietly, document everything, and then bring it to the authorities with evidence they can act on. A detective told me once that the difference between a case that gets prosecuted and one that gets filed away is documentation. She was right. Without those cameras, without the screenshots and the license plates and the timeline I built, this would have been my word against Cody's. He would have said I gave him permission. Taylor would have said she didn't know, and homeowners would still be getting exploited. It's been 14 months since the trial. I rebuilt Karen's garden last spring. The Japanese maple is still there. Nobody filmed in front of it. Nobody used it as a backdrop. It's still hers. I sit out there some evenings when I'm home, drinking coffee in the quiet, watching the light come through the leaves the way she used to describe it. I don't feel safe the way I used to. I probably never will. But I feel something close to it, a version of safety that comes from vigilance rather than trust. It's not the same. It's harder, more exhausting. But it's mine. My father had a saying. He'd tell me, "Dale, a man's home is his castle, but only if he guards the gate." I used to think that was about locking the door. Now I know it's about paying attention. It's about not assuming that the people you let inside will honor the space you've built. Most will. But the ones who won't, the ones who see your absence as their opportunity, they're counting on you not to notice. They're counting on your trust, your routine, your long hours, and empty driveway. Don't give them that. Guard your gate. And if someone breaches it, do what I did. Watch. Document. Report. And don't stop until the system does what it's supposed to do. Because your home isn't just a building. It's every memory you've made inside those walls. Every person you've loved there. Every quiet evening and loud holiday and lazy Sunday morning. It's yours, and nobody has the right to turn it into their profit. Not for content. Not for bookings. Not for anything. Fight for it. I promise you, it's worth the fight.